The empire at its peak, the rise of Trajan and the king who dared to challenge Rome. The mist hung low over the Danube as dawn slowly pushed away the darkness. For a long moment, neither side moved. On one bank of the river stood nearly 100,000 Roman soldiers, their polished helmets catching the first rays of the rising sun. Thousands of shields formed an endless wall of crimson and bronze. Eagles perched atop their standards glimmered in the morning light, symbols of an empire that believed itself destined to rule the world. Across the river, high among the forested hills, another army waited. Unlike the disciplined ranks below, these warriors blended into the landscape itself. Their long hair flowed beneath wolf-headed standards that snapped violently in the cold wind. Curved falx blades rested against broad shoulders. Faces painted for battle watched silently from the cliffs. They were the Dacians. They had no marble cities. No vast navy. No endless road stretching across continents. But they possessed something Rome had learned to respect, an unbreakable determination to defend their homeland. Between these two worlds stood a single river. Within months, it would become one of the bloodiest frontiers in Roman history. Thousands would die. Entire cities would disappear. Fortresses would burn. Kings would fall. And mountains rich with gold would change the destiny of an empire. But before the first sword was drawn, before the thunder of Roman legions echoed through the Carpathians, before Emperor Trajan earned the title that would make him one of history's greatest conquerors, one question remained. Why would the greatest empire on earth risk everything for a kingdom hidden among distant mountains? This is the story of Trajan's Dacian Wars. At the beginning of the 2nd century AD, the Roman Empire stood at the height of its confidence. From the mist-covered hills of Britannia to the scorching deserts of Arabia, Rome controlled lands unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. More than 60 million people lived beneath Roman rule. Merchants carried silk from China, spices from India, ivory from Africa, amber from the Baltic, and grain from Egypt. Every day, thousands of carts rolled across an astonishing network of roads stretching more than 250,000 miles. Aqueducts carried fresh water into crowded cities where marble temples rose above bustling markets. Amphitheaters echoed with cheers as gladiators fought before tens of thousands of spectators. Engineers built bridges, harbors, and fortifications that would survive for centuries. The empire looked invincible. Yet appearances often hide uncomfortable truths. Maintaining such an enormous state required unimaginable wealth. Every legion stationed on the frontier had to be paid. Roads required constant repairs. Cities demanded new monuments. The Roman people expected games, grain distributions, and public entertainment. The empire consumed money almost as quickly as it expanded. For generations, conquest had solved that problem. Each victorious campaign brought fresh territory, enslaved populations, and enormous quantities of treasure into Roman hands. But by the end of the 1st century AD, expansion had slowed. Many of Rome's borders had reached natural barriers, the Atlantic Ocean, the Sahara Desert, the Euphrates River, and the dense forests of northern Europe. Finding a wealthy new enemy worth conquering had become increasingly difficult. History, however, had one more kingdom waiting. A kingdom hidden beyond the Danube. A land whose mountains concealed some of Europe's richest gold mines. A kingdom ruled by a man Rome could neither intimidate nor easily defeat. His name was Decebalus. And he would force one of history's greatest emperors into the defining war of his life. Long before Roman legions ever crossed the Danube, the kingdom of Dacia had grown into one of the strongest powers in southeastern Europe. Its land stretched across what is now largely modern Romania, surrounded by the towering Carpathian Mountains, dense forests, fertile valleys, and swift rivers. Nature itself served as Dacia's first line of defense. Steep mountain passes narrowed invading armies into vulnerable columns. Ancient forests concealed hidden paths known only to local guides. Rocky ridges provided perfect positions for ambushes. Even experienced Roman commanders viewed these landscapes with caution. The Dacians understood every hill, every stream, every cliff. This was their greatest advantage. Unlike Rome's orderly cities, Dacian settlements often blended naturally into the mountains. Powerful stone fortresses crowned high ridges, protected by thick walls and deep defensive earthworks. Watchtowers overlooked valleys for miles. Smoke signals could warn entire regions within minutes. At the heart of the kingdom stood Sarmizegetusa Regia. Hidden among forested mountains, it was both royal capital and sacred center. Temples with circular stone sanctuaries reflected deeply rooted religious traditions. Priests advised kings. Astronomical knowledge guided rituals. Religion and politics existed side by side. To Roman observers, Dacia seemed mysterious. To its people, it was simply home. Daily life revolved around farming, blacksmithing, hunting, animal husbandry, and trade. Iron weapons produced by Dacian craftsmen earned an excellent reputation. Gold ornaments displayed remarkable artistry. Merchants traveled through mountain passes exchanging metals, salt, timber, and livestock with neighboring peoples. Although they lacked Rome's immense bureaucracy, the Dacians possessed an organized kingdom capable of mobilizing tens of thousands of warriors when threatened. And that threat was never far away. For decades, Rome and Dacia existed in an uneasy relationship. Sometimes they traded. Sometimes they negotiated. Often they fought. The Danube River acted as both bridge and barrier. Roman forts lined its southern bank. Across the water lay a kingdom that refused to become another Roman province. The conflict intensified during the reign of Emperor Domitian. Several Roman campaigns ended in humiliation. Entire legions struggled against Dacian resistance. Roman generals underestimated both the terrain and their enemy. Decebalus exploited every mistake. He launched sudden attacks. He vanished into the mountains before larger Roman forces could respond. He united neighboring tribes whenever Rome appeared vulnerable. Eventually, Domitian accepted an embarrassing peace agreement. Rome agreed to pay subsidies. Roman engineers even assisted Decebalus in strengthening his defenses. Officially, the treaty ended the war. In reality, it merely postponed a far greater conflict. Many senators considered the agreement a stain upon Roman honor. Military officers quietly shared the same opinion. The empire had paid a foreign king for peace. For Rome, that was almost unthinkable. Everything changed in the year 98 AD. A new emperor ascended the throne. Unlike many rulers before him, Marcus Ulpius Traianus had not been born into Rome's ancient aristocracy. He was born in Hispania, modern-day Spain, into a respected military family. His father had served the empire with distinction. Young Trajan grew up surrounded by soldiers rather than politicians. He understood discipline before luxury. Campaigns before ceremonies. Duty before personal ambition. Tall, broad-shouldered, and physically imposing, Trajan projected calm confidence rather than theatrical authority. Ancient writers described him as approachable. He marched alongside his troops. Shared hardships. Inspected fortifications personally. Rewarded competence instead of favoritism. Unlike emperors who ruled from palace halls, Trajan preferred military camps. His soldiers admired him because he demanded no comfort for himself that he would deny them. When he became emperor, many Romans believed fortune had finally smiled upon the empire again. Yet Trajan inherited unfinished business. Every map in the imperial palace reminded him of one uncomfortable reality. North of the Danube remained an independent kingdom. Its king had defeated Roman armies, accepted Roman payments, and continued strengthening his position. Trajan understood something many politicians ignored. As long as Decebalus remained powerful, Rome's Danubian frontier would never truly be secure. But security was only part of the equation. There was another reason. One spoken quietly in private conversations. Gold. The mountains of Dacia contained extraordinary mineral wealth. Ancient mines produced enormous quantities of precious metals. Conquering them would transform Rome's finances for generations. Honor. Security. Wealth. Three powerful motivations. Together, they made war increasingly inevitable. Far away in his mountain capital, Decebalus watched Roman movements just as carefully. He was no reckless barbarian king. Roman historians, despite viewing foreign enemies through imperial eyes, repeatedly acknowledged his intelligence. He understood diplomacy, engineering, psychological warfare, military logistics. He recruited skilled craftsmen from abroad, improved fortifications, forged alliances with neighboring tribes, strengthened mountain defenses, prepared for the day Rome inevitably returned. Because he knew they would. Peace with Rome rarely lasted forever. Especially when pride had been wounded. Some evenings, as fires illuminated the stone terraces of Sarmizegetusa, Decebalus likely stood overlooking the dark forests surrounding his capital. Beyond those endless trees lay the Danube. Beyond the Danube lay the greatest military machine the world had ever seen. Soon, it would come for him. And neither king nor emperor could avoid what history had already begun to set in motion. By the close of the century's first years, activity along the Roman frontier intensified. Roads filled with marching columns. Supply depots expanded. Blacksmiths worked day and night forging weapons, armor, nails, horseshoes, and siege equipment. Surveyors mapped crossing points. Engineers calculated bridge designs. Grain shipments increased. War rarely began with swords. It began with logistics. An army of nearly 100,000 men could consume enormous quantities of food every single day. Each soldier required weapons, replacement sandals, clothing, medical care, and transport animals. Thousands of mules pulled wagons loaded with flour, tools, timber, tents, and artillery components. Roman organization became a weapon every bit as deadly as the gladius. Across the river, Dacian scouts observed everything. Messengers disappeared into forests carrying urgent reports toward the mountains. The kingdom prepared in its own way. Villages stored grain. Fortresses repaired walls. Warriors sharpened falx blades capable of slicing through Roman shields and even helmets with terrifying force. Families understood what approached. Some quietly packed belongings. Others prayed. Many simply waited. For a brief moment, Europe held its breath. Two remarkable leaders. Two determined civilizations. One frontier. Neither willing to yield. History had reached another turning point. And before long, the waters of the Danube would reflect not only the morning sun, but the fires of a war that would forever change the Roman Empire. The First Dacian War, 101 to 102 AD. The legions crossed the Danube. For weeks, the Danube had seemed almost peaceful. Its broad waters reflected clear autumn skies. Fishermen still cast their nets along quiet coves. Birds circled above the reeds, unaware that one of the largest armies the Roman Empire had assembled in generations was gathering just beyond the horizon. Then, before sunrise one cold morning in the spring of AD 101, the silence ended. Trumpets shattered the dawn. Thousands of soldiers emerged from their camps at once. Standards bearing the golden eagle rose above tightly ordered ranks. Engineers hurried to their assigned positions. Officers barked commands that echoed across the riverbank. The invasion had begun. From the Dacian side, scouts watched the movement with growing unease. At first, they believed the Romans were preparing another border exercise, another display of strength meant to intimidate. But history had other plans. This time, the empire had not come to negotiate. It had come to conquer. No Roman campaign began with reckless courage. It began with preparation. Trajan understood that defeating the Dacians would require more than brave soldiers. The Carpathian Mountains were unlike the deserts of the east or the plains of Gaul. Every valley could hide an ambush. Every forest could swallow an army whole. So before the First Legion crossed the Danube, Roman engineers transformed the frontier into a machine of war. Temporary bridges of timber stretched across the river. Ferries carried cavalry, siege equipment, and supply wagons. Hundreds of boats worked in coordinated rhythm, transporting thousands of men every hour. Behind them came endless lines of oxen, mules, blacksmiths, carpenters, doctors, surveyors, cooks, and laborers. A Roman army was not merely an army. It was a moving city. Every evening, after a day's march, soldiers built a fortified camp. Ditches were dug. Earthen ramparts were raised. Wooden stakes formed defensive walls. Streets were laid out in perfect order. Command tents stood at the center. By nightfall, what had been an empty field that morning had become a fortress capable of resisting attack. The discipline astonished Rome's enemies. It also exhausted its soldiers. Yet they accepted the hardship without complaint. Because discipline was the foundation upon which the empire had been built. Emperor Trajan did not remain behind in safety. He marched at the head of his army. Contemporary accounts describe him riding among the legions, speaking with ordinary soldiers, inspecting equipment, and sharing the same difficult roads. Unlike rulers who directed campaigns from distant palaces, Trajan wanted his men to see him. To them, he was not a distant emperor wrapped in luxury. He was their commander. Many veterans later recalled how his presence strengthened morale during the campaign. When supplies arrived late, he waited alongside everyone else. When roads became rivers of mud, he endured them as well. That earned respect no proclamation ever could. Across the mountains, King Decebalus received constant reports. Roman columns had crossed. More continued arriving each day. The scale of the invasion exceeded even his expectations. Rather than meeting the Romans immediately in open battle, he chose patience. It was a decision born from experience. He knew Rome wanted one decisive engagement where discipline and numbers could prevail. Instead, the Dacians forced the invaders deeper into unfamiliar territory. Scouts shadowed every Roman movement. Supply routes were observed. Messengers carried updates from village to village. Small groups of warriors struck isolated patrols before disappearing into dense forests. Sometimes Roman soldiers awoke to discover sentries missing. Sometimes wagons vanished during the night. Fear spread slowly. Not because the Dacians won major victories, but because they were almost impossible to catch. The forests themselves seemed to fight alongside them. The deeper the Romans advanced, the harsher the land became. Rolling plains gave way to steep hills. Those hills became mountains. Dense oak and beech forests blocked sunlight even during midday. Narrow valleys forced entire legions into long columns where only a fraction of their strength could engage an enemy. Rain turned roads into rivers of mud. Heavy wagons sank axle-deep. Pack animals collapsed from exhaustion. Cold mountain nights replaced the warmth of the Danubian frontier. Yet the Romans kept moving. Engineers cut roads through forests. Bridges appeared across streams within hours. Trees fell before disciplined ranks of axemen. Where nature presented obstacles, Roman engineering answered with solutions. The Dacians watched with growing concern. Rome was not advancing quickly. But it was advancing relentlessly. For ordinary legionaries, this campaign differed from any they had known. Many had fought in Germany or along the Rhine. Few had seen mountains like these. One veteran from Legio 7 Claudia later wrote that the forests seemed endless. The enemy, he observed, could be standing only 20 paces away and remain invisible. Every rustling branch invited suspicion. Every distant howl froze conversation. Even experienced soldiers found themselves gripping their shields tighter. Fear often grows strongest when danger cannot be seen. Meanwhile, Decebalus prepared his greatest weapon. Not the Falks. Not his fortresses. But the landscape itself. He ordered villages evacuated ahead of the Roman advance. Grain stores were hidden or destroyed. Bridges collapsed. Mountain passes were blocked with fallen trees and massive stones. Roman foraging parties returned empty-handed. Everything had to come from the supply lines stretching hundreds of kilometers back toward the Danube. The farther Trajan marched, the longer, and more vulnerable, those supply lines became. It was a dangerous game. If Rome lost access to food, even the greatest army in the world could starve. Yet Trajan refused to be drawn into frustration. He understood Decebalus was trying to provoke mistakes. Instead, Roman discipline tightened. Scouting parties increased. Supply convoys traveled under heavier guard. Temporary forts appeared along the marching route, protecting communication with the rear. Every few days, engineers repaired roads damaged by Dacian sabotage. Progress slowed. But it never stopped. History had shown that Rome often defeated stronger enemies simply because it refused to quit. As summer approached, both armies knew a decisive clash could no longer be avoided. The place would become legendary. Tapae. A narrow mountain pass surrounded by forests and steep ridges. For centuries, it had guarded one of the principal routes into the Dacian heartland. If Trajan captured it, the road toward Sarmizegetusa would open. If Decebalus held it, the invasion might collapse. Both commanders understood the stakes. Neither intended to retreat. The morning of the battle dawned beneath heavy clouds. Cold wind swept through the mountain pass. Roman engineers had barely cleared enough space for the advancing legions to deploy. The terrain favored the defenders. Dense woodland hemmed in both flanks. The narrow valley prevented Rome from using its full numerical advantage. Exactly as Decebalus intended. High above, hidden among the trees, thousands of Dacian warriors waited. Wolf banners fluttered against the gray sky. Their curved falx blades gleamed whenever clouds briefly parted. Some warriors painted their faces before battle. Others touched small amulets hanging around their necks. Priests had blessed many of them only days earlier. Below, Roman horns echoed through the valley. Legions formed disciplined ranks. Heavy rectangular shields locked together. Centurions paced before their men, shouting final instructions. Pilum javelins rested ready. Gladii remained sheathed. Every soldier knew what came next. The silence before battle felt endless. Then it happened. A single Dacian war horn cried out from the ridge. Moments later, hundreds answered. The forests erupted. Warriors charged downhill with terrifying speed, screaming as they descended toward the Roman lines. The sound alone unsettled many young legionaries. It was unlike anything they had heard before. The Dacians fought not in perfect geometric formations but in powerful waves, using the slope to build unstoppable momentum. Trajan immediately recognized the danger. "Hold the line," officers shouted. The first volley of Pila darkened the sky. Heavy Roman javelins crashed into charging warriors, punching through shields and armor alike. Dozens fell. Yet the attack did not stop. The survivors slammed into the Roman front with incredible force. The clash echoed through the mountains. Iron struck iron. Wood splintered. Men shouted in Latin and Dacian. Dust mixed with rain as boots struggled for purchase on the muddy ground. The battle for Tapae had begun. What happened next shocked many Roman veterans. The Dacian falx proved every bit as deadly as reports had claimed. Its long, curved blade could hook over a Roman shield and strike the soldier behind it. In powerful two-handed swings, it was capable of splitting helmets or breaking limbs through armor. Archaeological evidence suggests that, because of encounters like these, Roman armor and helmets were later reinforced with additional iron bands and protective arm guards. The weapon was not invincible, but it demanded respect. Several legionaries in the front ranks fell before they could even draw their swords. For a brief moment, the Roman line bent backward. The Dacians roared, sensing an opportunity. But history had other plans. The strength of a Roman legion was not merely the courage of individual soldiers. It was the discipline of the formation. Centurions immediately ordered the second rank forward. Fresh men stepped into the gaps. Shields locked once more. The line held. Then, slowly, it began to push. Like a great iron wall, the legions advanced one measured step at a time. The momentum of the Dacian charge began to fade. As the fighting raged, dark clouds gathered overhead. Thunder rolled across the mountains. Rain poured onto the battlefield, turning the ground into slick mud stained with blood. Ancient writers later described the storm as so violent that many believed the gods themselves were watching the struggle. Whether that detail is literal or symbolic remains uncertain, but the image endured through the centuries, lightning flashing above two armies locked in desperate combat, neither willing to yield. For hours, the outcome remained uncertain. Trajan moved along the line, encouraging his men. Decebalus directed reserves from the high ground, searching for a weakness. Neither commander could yet claim victory. The fate of the campaign, and perhaps the future of the empire itself, still hung in the balance. The road to the Dacian heartland, the war that refused to end. Night settled slowly over the battlefield of Tapae. The cries of battle had faded, replaced by a far more haunting sound. The wounded. Across the rain-soaked valley, men called out for water in Latin and Dacian alike. Horses wandered riderless through the darkness. Broken shields lay scattered beside bent spears, shattered helmets, and blood-soaked standards. Small fires flickered where surgeons worked without rest, amputating shattered limbs, stitching deep wounds, and trying to save men who had marched hundreds of miles only to find death in a mountain pass. Victory belonged to Rome. But it had not come cheaply. Trajan rode silently across the battlefield before dawn. Ancient Roman commanders often inspected the dead after major engagements, not merely to count losses but to understand exactly how the battle had unfolded. Every broken formation, every pile of bodies, every abandoned weapon told a story. The emperor dismounted beside a fallen centurion whose battered shield still bore the scars of countless blows. According to later tradition, Trajan personally honored acts of exceptional bravery, rewarding survivors and ensuring the families of the fallen would not be forgotten. Whether every story surrounding him is entirely accurate is impossible to know. But one fact is certain. He never underestimated the enemy standing before him again. Because the Dacians had proven something remarkable. They could stand against Rome. King Decebalus had lost the battle. He had not lost the war. Unlike many rulers who gambled everything on a single confrontation, Decebalus understood that survival mattered more than pride. Instead of allowing his army to be destroyed, he ordered a disciplined withdrawal deeper into the mountains. The retreat was carefully organized. Bridges were burned behind the army. Mountain paths were blocked with timber and stone. Hidden detachments remained behind to harass Roman scouts. Every kilometer Trajan advanced cost time, supplies, and lives. It frustrated many Roman officers. They wanted another decisive battle. Decebalus refused to give them one. Instead, he transformed the landscape itself into his greatest ally. As the Roman army pressed farther into Dacia, the terrain became even more unforgiving. The valleys narrowed. The forests thickened. Steep ridges forced entire columns into dangerous single-file marches. From above, hidden warriors watched every movement. Sometimes a single horn echoed across the mountains. Moments later, arrows would rain from the trees. Before Roman soldiers could organize a counterattack, the attackers had already disappeared. The Dacians were masters of irregular warfare. They knew every hidden trail. Every cave. Every stream that could conceal movement. The Romans called them elusive. Today, historians might describe many of their tactics as an early form of guerrilla warfare. It did not win great battles, but it slowly exhausted even the most disciplined armies. Yet Rome possessed something equally powerful: patience. Trajan refused to chase every raiding party into the forests. Instead, he advanced methodically. Every captured position became another fortified camp. Every road was widened. Every bridge strengthened. Engineers followed directly behind the marching columns, transforming wild mountain tracks into roads capable of supporting thousands of soldiers. Where rivers blocked progress, bridges appeared. Where cliffs stood in the way, workers carved passages through solid rock. The Roman army fought not only with swords but with shovels, axes, and hammers. Each day they reshaped the landscape itself. Centuries later, archaeologists would still discover traces of these military roads buried beneath forests that had long reclaimed the mountains. For ordinary legionaries, however, glory often gave way to routine. A typical day began before sunrise. Trumpets sounded while mist still covered the valleys. Breakfast was simple: bread, cheese, dried fruit, perhaps salted pork if supplies allowed. Then came the march. 20 kilometers. Sometimes 30. Always wearing heavy armor, carrying shields, weapons, tools, and personal equipment weighing more than 30 kilograms. Roman soldiers were expected not merely to fight. They were expected to build. After hours of marching, they dug ditches, raised walls, erected tents, repaired equipment, gathered firewood, and stood guard throughout the night. There were no weekends. No days off. Only discipline. Many historians believe this relentless routine explains why Roman legions consistently outperformed larger armies throughout antiquity. Training had become habit. Habit became instinct. Meanwhile, life in the Dacian mountains had changed dramatically. Villages emptied before the advancing Romans. Families carried what possessions they could into remote valleys. Children who had once known peaceful summers now learned to recognize the sound of Roman horns. Blacksmiths worked continuously forging new falx blades, spearheads, and arrowheads. Women prepared food for warriors who rarely remained home for more than a few days. Priests climbed sacred terraces overlooking Sarmizegetusa, offering sacrifices and prayers to the gods. Every member of society became part of the war effort. The conflict was no longer merely between two rulers. It had become a struggle for the survival of an entire kingdom. Back in Rome, news from the front arrived slowly. Weeks sometimes passed before official dispatches reached the Senate. Citizens crowded public forums whenever messengers arrived from the Danube. Some celebrated every Roman victory. Others quietly wondered why this campaign appeared far more difficult than expected. Wars were expensive. Every additional legion required enormous resources. Taxes supported roads, fortifications, weapons, food, and wages. Merchants watched events closely because military success often meant new trade opportunities. Families anxiously awaited letters from sons serving hundreds of miles away. The empire fought as one enormous machine. But every gear within that machine was connected to real human lives. As autumn approached, Decebalus realized he needed to change the rhythm of the war. Allowing Trajan to advance slowly toward the Dacian heartland would eventually prove disastrous. So he made a bold decision. Instead of waiting in the mountains, he would strike Roman territory. The plan was daring. While Trajan concentrated much of his army deep inside Dacia, Decebalus crossed the Danube with allied forces, including Sarmatians and Roxolani cavalry, launching attacks into the Roman province of Moesia. Roman settlements suddenly found themselves under threat. Villages burned. Watchtowers fell. Panic spread across the frontier. For a brief moment, it seemed the Dacian king had seized the initiative. History had seen this strategy before. Rather than defending one's homeland indefinitely, carry the war into enemy territory and force the invader to react. It was a gamble. one that nearly succeeded. When news reached Trajan, the emperor acted immediately. He understood the danger. If Roman provinces along the Danube collapsed, the entire campaign might unravel. Leaving strong garrisons behind, he rapidly marched south with selected legions. The speed of the Roman response astonished many contemporaries. Within weeks, forces that had been campaigning deep in enemy territory now prepared to defend imperial soil. The two armies would soon meet once again. This time, on ground of Trajan's choosing. The decisive confrontation occurred near Adamklisai, in what is now southeastern Romania. Unlike the narrow mountain pass of Tapae, the landscape here was more open. Rolling hills stretched beneath wide skies. The terrain favored disciplined formations. Trajan intended to use that advantage. The battle that followed was savage. Ancient sources offer only limited details, but they agree on one point. Roman casualties were extraordinarily heavy. The Dacians and their allies fought with desperate determination. Several units reportedly suffered devastating losses before reinforcements stabilized the line. Some historians believe this engagement was among the bloodiest battles of the entire campaign. Trajan eventually secured victory. Yet once again, it came at tremendous cost. Years later, to honor the fallen, the emperor ordered the construction of the Tropaeum Traiani monument at Adamklisai. Unlike the elegant artistic style of Trajan's column in Rome, this monument displayed a harsher, more direct portrayal of warfare. Its sculpted reliefs showed Roman soldiers and Dacian warriors locked in brutal combat. Even today, it stands as a reminder that victory often demands terrible sacrifice. Winter approached. Snow began covering the Carpathian Mountains. Campaigning became increasingly difficult. Roads vanished beneath ice. Mountain passes became nearly impassable. Neither army could sustain major operations. For the first time in many months, the weapons grew quiet. But only temporarily. Behind the silence, both rulers prepared for what came next. Trajan knew the campaign had exposed the strengths and weaknesses of his army. He had seen the devastating power of the Dacian folks. He had experienced the difficulty of operating in mountainous terrain. He understood that if Rome intended to destroy Decebalus once and for all, the next invasion would need to be even larger, even better supplied, and supported by engineering on a scale the ancient world had rarely witnessed. Across the mountains, Decebalus reached a similar conclusion. He had survived. His kingdom still stood. But each Roman advance came closer to Sarmizegetusa. Each campaign strengthened Rome's understanding of Dacia. Each battle cost warriors who could not easily be replaced. For a brief moment, both sides accepted negotiations. A peace agreement was reached in AD 102. Decebalus agreed to dismantle some fortifications, surrender war machines, return Roman prisoners, and recognize Rome's authority in certain matters. On paper, the war had ended. In reality, neither side believed the peace would last. Trajan regarded it as a temporary solution. Decebalus viewed it as precious time to rebuild. Both men left the negotiating table already thinking about the next war. Because beneath the snow-covered mountains of Dacia, the fires of conflict had not gone out. They had merely been buried. And when they returned, they would burn hotter than ever before. The Second Dacian War, 105 to 106 AD, the fall of a king. 3 years. For 3 long years, the swords had mostly fallen silent. Officially, Rome and Dacia were at peace. Merchants once again crossed parts of the Danube. Border forts resumed their routines. Farmers returned to fields scarred by war. To anyone looking from afar, it seemed the conflict had ended. But beneath that fragile calm, both sides were preparing for something far greater. Neither Trajan nor Decebalus believed the treaty would last. And both were right. Decebalus understood that the agreement signed in AD 102 had bought him only one thing: time. Every day mattered. Instead of surrendering to Roman influence, he immediately began rebuilding his kingdom. Fortifications that had been damaged during the first campaign were quietly repaired. New defensive walls rose among the mountains. Hidden weapon workshops resumed production. Messengers rode through forests seeking alliances with neighboring tribes. Engineers strengthened mountain roads leading toward the capital. Even more concerning for Rome, Decebalus welcomed Roman deserters and skilled craftsmen who possessed valuable military knowledge. Some helped construct new siege defenses. Others improved Dacian weapons. To Trajan, these actions were unmistakable. The king was preparing for another war. Rome had not remained idle either. If anything, the empire prepared with even greater determination. Trajan carefully studied every lesson from the first campaign. He knew what had gone wrong. The Danube had slowed the invasion. The mountains had favored the defenders. The long supply lines had created constant problems. This time, he intended to remove every advantage Decebalus possessed. That meant thinking beyond ordinary military strategy. It meant building something the ancient world had never seen before. On the southern bank of the Danube, thousands of workers gathered. Stonecutters, carpenters, blacksmiths, surveyors, engineers, legionaries. All worked under the direction of one remarkable man. Apollodorus of Damascus. Already famous for his architectural brilliance, Apollodorus received an extraordinary challenge. Build a permanent bridge across one of Europe's greatest rivers. Not a temporary military crossing. Not a collection of floating pontoons. A bridge of stone and timber capable of carrying entire Roman legions directly into Dacia. Many believed it impossible. The Danube was wide. Its current powerful. Spring floods could destroy ordinary structures within days. But Roman engineering rarely accepted the word impossible. Massive stone piers were sunk deep into the riverbed. Above them rose towering wooden arches stretching from bank to bank. When completed, the bridge extended for more than 1 kilometer. For centuries, it remained one of the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world. More importantly, it changed everything. The Danube was no longer a natural barrier. It had become a Roman highway. When reports of the bridge reached Sarmizegetusa, Decebalus immediately understood its significance. The first war had been fought across a frontier. The second would be fought inside his kingdom from the very beginning. Rome would no longer struggle to transport supplies. Legions could cross quickly. Reinforcements could arrive without delay. Retreat would be easier. Advance would be relentless. The balance of power had shifted dramatically. In the spring of AD 105, Roman horns sounded once more. The Second Dacian War had begun. This invasion dwarfed the previous campaign. More legions. More cavalry. More auxiliary troops from every corner of the empire. Archers from Syria. Horsemen from Spain. Engineers from Italy. German cavalry. African recruits. The Roman army had become an international force united beneath one eagle. Its objective was simple. Not victory. Not negotiation. The complete destruction of Decebalus' kingdom. This time, Trajan advanced on multiple fronts. Rather than allowing the Dacians to concentrate their defenses in one region, Roman columns pushed through several mountain routes simultaneously. It was a masterpiece of operational planning. Every road became dangerous. Every valley threatened. Dacian commanders struggled to predict where the main attack would fall. Whenever one Roman force encountered resistance, another appeared somewhere else. The pressure never stopped. Day after day, the Roman advance continued. The fighting grew even more brutal than before. The Dacians understood there would be no favorable peace this time. Every fortress became a battlefield. Stone walls echoed with the impact of Roman artillery. Ballistae launched massive bolts capable of piercing multiple men. Catapults hurled heavy stones against defensive towers. Siege ramps slowly climbed toward seemingly impregnable walls. When breaches appeared, legionaries stormed forward beneath clouds of arrows. Combat became hand-to-hand. Shield against shield. Sword against falx. No room remained for elegant formations. Only survival. Despite the overwhelming Roman numbers, the Dacians refused to surrender. Mountain fortresses fell one by one. Yet each victory cost Rome precious time and lives. Some defenders fought until every wall had collapsed. Others escaped through hidden mountain paths, joining new resistance forces deeper inland. Roman officers increasingly admired the determination of their enemy. Even hostile historians later acknowledged the extraordinary courage displayed by the Dacians. They were defending not merely territory. They were defending their civilization. As the campaign advanced, Trajan ordered systematic destruction of Dacian military infrastructure. Storehouses burned. Workshops were dismantled. Road junctions occupied. Watchtowers demolished. The strategy was deliberate. Without supplies, communication, and defensive positions, even the bravest army would eventually collapse. It was not simply conquest. It was the dismantling of an entire military system. Then came the greatest objective of all. Sarmizegetusa Regia. Hidden high within the Oresti Mountains, surrounded by forests and defended by a network of powerful hilltop fortresses, it represented far more than a capital. It was the heart of Dacia. Its temples reflected centuries of religious tradition. Its terraces overlooked sacred sanctuaries where priests had guided kings. Stone walls protected royal residences, workshops, and enormous storehouses. For generations, this city had symbolized Dacian independence. If it fell, the kingdom itself would fall. Trajan knew a direct assault would be costly. Instead, Roman engineers carefully studied the defenses. Archaeological evidence suggests that they discovered something crucial. The city's water supply. Sophisticated ceramic pipes carried fresh mountain water into the fortress. Destroy those pipes, and the defenders would face an impossible choice. Fight without water. Or surrender. Roman soldiers quietly worked under cover of siege operations. Eventually, the water system was cut. Inside Sarmizegetusa, panic slowly spread. At first, people rationed what remained. Then wells began running dry. Soldiers grew weaker. Animals collapsed. The summer heat became unbearable. Families realized the truth before their leaders admitted it. The city could not survive much longer. The final assault began at dawn. Roman artillery pounded the walls relentlessly. Smoke rose above the sacred terraces. Wooden buildings caught fire. Defenders rushed from one breach to another, desperately trying to contain the attack. The sound was overwhelming. Stone crashing. Commands shouted. Children crying. Metal striking metal. The sacred capital of Dacia had become a battlefield. After days of relentless fighting, Roman troops finally broke through. Street by street, they advanced toward the center of the city. Many buildings were deliberately burned to prevent future resistance. Others collapsed beneath the weight of siege engines. Centuries of history disappeared in flames. King Decebalus escaped before the final capture. Accompanied by a small group of loyal horsemen, he fled into the mountains. Rome immediately launched a massive pursuit. Trajan understood that as long as the king remained free, resistance might continue. Roman cavalry spread across valleys and forests. Scouts questioned villagers. Every mountain path was searched. The hunt had begun. For several days, Decebalus managed to stay ahead of his pursuers. He knew these mountains better than anyone. But Rome had committed too many men. Eventually, near a remote hillside, the fugitives realized escape was no longer possible. Roman cavalry closed in from every direction. According to the famous scene later carved on Trajan's column, Decebalus made one final decision. Rather than be captured and displayed in a Roman triumph, he drew his curved blade across his own throat. Modern historians generally accept that he took his own life, although the precise details cannot be confirmed. For the Romans, it was the end of a dangerous enemy. For the Dacians, it was the tragic end of their last independent king. His death marked the end of organized resistance. When Trajan received confirmation that Decebalus was dead, the war was effectively over. After years of planning, 2 invasions, countless battles, and enormous sacrifices, Rome had achieved its objective. Dacia became a Roman province. Its immense gold and silver mines passed into imperial control. Ancient sources speak of astonishing quantities of treasure captured after the conquest. While the exact figures are debated by historians, there is broad agreement that the wealth flowing from Dacia greatly strengthened the imperial treasury and helped finance Trajan's ambitious building projects across the empire. The greatest territorial expansion in Roman history was complete. Yet as smoke still drifted above the ruins of Sarmizegetusa, even victory carried a heavy price. Thousands of Roman soldiers would never return home. Entire Dacian communities had been destroyed. A proud kingdom had vanished from the political map of Europe. History would remember Trajan as one of Rome's greatest emperors. But history also remembered the courage of the people who stood against him until the very end. The gold of Dacia, Rome's greatest triumph and the empire's last golden age. The war was over. After nearly 6 years of campaigns, thousands of kilometers marched, countless battles fought, and unimaginable sacrifices made, the banners of Rome flew over the mountains of Dacia. For the first time in generations, the northern frontier was silent. The war horns had stopped. The smoke that had hung over burned fortresses slowly disappeared into the autumn sky. The roads once filled with marching armies now carried something entirely different. Victory. Columns of wagons began moving south toward the Danube. Unlike those that had crossed into Dacia years earlier carrying weapons and grain, these wagons carried treasure. Gold. Silver. Weapons. Captured standards. Armor. Royal possessions. Ancient writers describe enormous quantities of precious metals taken from the conquered kingdom. While the exact amounts reported in some ancient sources are almost certainly exaggerated, as was common in triumphal literature, there is little doubt that Dacia's mineral wealth significantly increased Rome's financial resources. For ordinary Roman soldiers, the sight was unforgettable. Entire wagon trains glittered beneath the sun. Heavy sacks filled with gold ore. Silver ingots. Beautifully crafted jewelry. Decorated weapons unlike anything produced in Roman workshops. Each convoy represented not only wealth, but proof that years of hardship had achieved their purpose. Back in Rome, anticipation grew with every messenger arriving from the frontier. The Senate prepared celebrations. Markets buzzed with rumors. Children played at being Roman legionaries defeating the fierce Dacians. Poets began composing verses before the emperor had even returned. The empire had long celebrated military victories. But this was different. Trajan had not merely defeated an enemy. He had eliminated one of Rome's greatest rivals north of the Danube and added a wealthy province to the empire. His popularity soared to extraordinary heights. Many Romans believed they were witnessing the reign of the greatest emperor since Augustus. Months later, the streets of Rome overflowed with people. Before sunrise, citizens crowded every rooftop, balcony, and temple staircase. The city had seen triumphs before. Few compared to this one. The procession stretched for kilometers. At its head marched musicians and standard-bearers. Behind them came wagons loaded with captured weapons. Then exotic animals. Then prisoners. Then carts overflowing with treasure from Dacia. The cheers became deafening. People reached out hoping to catch a glimpse of the emperor. Finally, Trajan appeared. Standing proudly in a triumphal chariot drawn by 4 magnificent white horses, crowned with laurel, wearing the richly embroidered purple triumphal toga, he represented the very image of Roman victory. Behind him stood a servant holding a golden crown above his head. According to Roman tradition, the servant whispered a quiet reminder throughout the celebration. "Remember, you are only a man." Whether those exact words were spoken on Trajan's triumph remains uncertain, but the custom reflected one of Rome's oldest beliefs. Even at the height of glory, mortality remained. The celebrations lasted for weeks. Ancient historians record that Trajan organized magnificent public games to honor the victory. Thousands of gladiators fought in the arenas. Wild animal hunts filled the amphitheaters. Public feasts distributed food to enormous crowds. Coins bearing symbols of the Dacian conquest entered circulation across the empire. Every citizen could now hold the memory of victory in the palm of their hand. Rome wanted the entire known world to remember what had happened beyond the Danube. But perhaps the greatest monument to the campaign would not be a feast, or a parade, or even a temple. It would be carved in stone. At the center of Trajan's magnificent new forum rose a monument unlike anything the ancient world had ever seen. Trajan's Column. Standing nearly 40 meters high, the column became a giant illustrated history book wrapped around itself. A spiral frieze winds upward for almost 200 meters, depicting more than 2,000 human figures. Every scene tells part of the story. Roman soldiers building bridges. Legions marching. Camps under construction. Councils of war. Battles. Sieges. Victories. Even the emperor himself appears again and again, not always fighting, but planning, inspecting, encouraging, and leading. Remarkably, the column spends as much time showing engineering, logistics, and organization as it does combat. That was no accident. Rome wanted future generations to understand that its greatest strength was not merely bravery. It was discipline. Today, nearly 19 centuries later, Trajan's column still stands in the heart of Rome. Although weather has softened many details, historians continue to study it as one of the most valuable visual records of the Roman army ever created. Every carved figure offers clues about armor, weapons, clothing, military camps, siege machines, and daily life. Stone has preserved what words alone never could. The conquest of Dacia transformed the empire in ways that reached far beyond the battlefield. The new province quickly became one of Rome's most valuable territories. Its gold mines helped finance ambitious construction projects. Across the empire, new roads connected distant provinces. Bridges crossed rivers once thought impossible to span. Aqueducts carried fresh water into growing cities. Public baths, libraries, markets, and temples rose in marble and stone. Trajan's Forum itself, one of the largest architectural complexes ever built in Rome, stood as a lasting symbol of imperial confidence. Economic growth encouraged trade from Britain to Syria. Merchants traveled safely along Roman roads protected by frontier garrisons. For many citizens, these years represented a period of remarkable stability and prosperity. Historians often include Trajan's reign within what later became known as the era of the Five Good Emperors, a time remembered for effective administration, relative internal peace, and economic strength. Yet prosperity came with its own challenges. Every new province required soldiers to defend it. Every frontier demanded forts, roads, and governors. Rome had reached its greatest territorial extent. Maintaining such a vast empire would prove harder than conquering it. Life also changed dramatically for the people of Dacia. Roman veterans received land in the new province. New towns and colonies were established. Latin gradually spread through administration, trade, and military service. Roads connected mountain settlements to the wider empire. Local traditions did not disappear overnight. Instead, Roman and Dacian cultures slowly blended. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of this cultural exchange in everything from pottery and inscriptions to jewelry, temples, and burial customs. The story of Dacia after the conquest is not simply one of destruction. It is also one of adaptation. Of old traditions meeting new ideas. Of communities learning to live within a transformed world. Yet some mysteries remain. Not every fortress has been fully excavated. The sacred sanctuaries of Sarmizegetusa continue to reveal new discoveries. Hidden tunnels mentioned in later legends have inspired generations of treasure hunters, though many such stories remain unproven. Modern technologies, such as LiDAR scanning, aerial photography, and ground-penetrating surveys, have allowed archaeologists to identify ancient roads, fortifications, and settlements concealed beneath dense forests. Each new discovery reminds us that history is never truly finished. The ground still holds secrets. Trajan himself did not live forever. After years of successful campaigns and ambitious reforms, he died in AD 117 while returning from military operations in the east. His ashes were placed within the base of Trajan's column, a unique honor in Roman history. Even in death, the monument celebrating his greatest victory became his final resting place. His successor, Hadrian, would make a very different choice. Rather than seeking endless conquest, Hadrian strengthened borders and consolidated what Rome already possessed. Some historians believe this marked a profound shift in imperial policy. The age of rapid expansion had reached its natural limit. Trajan had carried the empire farther than any emperor before or after him. No Roman ruler would ever surpass the territorial size achieved during his reign. Looking back nearly 2,000 years later, it is tempting to see only winners and losers. Rome won. Dacia fell. But history is rarely so simple. Trajan secured his place among the greatest military leaders of antiquity through careful planning, exceptional logistics, and determined leadership. Decebalus earned lasting respect because he refused to surrender despite facing the most powerful empire on earth. Neither man was a myth. Neither was perfect. Both were shaped by the demands of their time. Their decisions changed the course of European history. Today, visitors can still walk among the ruins of Sarmizegetusa Regia, where sacred stone circles overlook the forests of the Oresti Mountains. They can stand beneath Trajan's column in Rome and follow, scene by scene, the story carved into its spiral. They can visit the remains of Trajan's bridge, whose surviving foundations still hint at the extraordinary ambition of Roman engineers. These places are silent now. No war horns echo through the valleys. No legions march across the Danube. No king waits upon the mountain walls. And yet, their story endures. Not because of the gold that enriched an empire. Not because of the victories engraved in marble. But because it reminds us of something timeless. Empires rise. Kingdoms fall. Cities are built. Cities burn. Borders change. Generations pass. Yet courage, ambition, sacrifice, and the desire to leave a mark upon history remain constants of the human experience. For a brief moment in the early 2nd century, two remarkable leaders stood on opposite sides of a river, each convinced that the future of his people depended on the choices he was about to make. One built an empire to its greatest height. The other fought until he had nothing left to give. Their war ended long ago. Its echoes never truly disappeared. Because history is not only written by those who win. It is remembered through the stories of everyone who dared to shape it. The mountains of Dacia still stand. And if you listen closely enough, they still whisper the story of Rome's greatest conquest.